be acceptable to thee, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Is this working okay? So, this story we have ingrained in us. It's Transfiguration, and hearing this story reminds us of all the other times we've had mountaintop experiences. But it's also written so that those who are following Jesus know that part of our tradition is visions. This might come as a surprise to us in this culture, but in the early Christian culture in the first century, it was taken for granted that some people have visions, some people talk in tongues, some people are led in different ways, and we never question the ways of God. Do you know what the key is to testing whether it's a vision or whether it's hallucinating? You look at the person's works. Are they doing something that has changed? Did the vision change something in them? Is it a good thing? And if it is, you can be pretty sure that God was involved in the vision. So when I first came to this church, I was interviewed by the vestry, and I got a tour of the church, and we were led through this back door over here by the sacristy. So the first thing I did was I walked into the middle of the chancel, and I looked up at the apse and saw that, that incredible vision of the Byzantine mosaic, Jesus on the throne. My breath was taken away. It's so beautiful, and I'd never seen anything like that before. So God had my attention. And then I turned around and I looked at all the empty pews because nobody was here. And I got hit by this palpable sense of prayer over the years. How many prayers have gone up to God from these very pews? And it was this overpowering, like, whack of a physical feeling. And I thought, there's more to this interview than meets the mind. I knew that there was something else happening here besides just a job. And I paid attention. So what happened to me once when I was in the chapel at St. Helena was another visionary experience that I wasn't expecting, and it kind of confused me. So I knew it was not something I did myself, but I was there on a retreat. I was recently separated from my second husband. I was full of a lot of remorse and sadness and grief, and I did a lot of self-blame at that time. And somebody invited me to go on this retreat to the Episcopal Convent of St. Helena. Those of you who know me know I eventually joined the Order of St. Helena, but what happened to me in the chapel is why I joined the Order of St. Helena. I went in there by myself, and this chapel was made out of glass, so it was like this glass pyramid that was within a pine forest, and I got down on my knees on a prayer bench, so I had a pillow under my knees and my spine was supported. And I was just meditating in this beautiful place by myself when all of a sudden I got this hard slap on the face and this feeling of being embraced by God in the midst of the slap, which reminded me of a slap in the face I got as a child. So I was immediately back in my childhood. But unlike when it happened in my childhood, I was held by God and loved more unreservedly than I had ever felt loved in my life. So I woke up from that. I wasn't flat on the ground like the disciples were, but I was, whoa, what was that? A slap that brings me back to an abusive event in my childhood, coupled with this love of God that gave me the message that I had been loved all along, even through some hardship things in my childhood. And that if I paid attention, I was being talked to by God all the time, but I hadn't had the equipment to listen. And that now is finally time to turn on my equipment and listen to what God had to say to me, because I had a lot of healing to do before I entered the Order of St. Helena. And God and I had an understanding about that if I was ever going to enter the Order, I need to do a lot of healing before I could come in, and that is what happened. Now, I didn't tell everybody about this vision, or the 75 visions that followed it. They did end eventually, but every one of them recreated a very upsetting moment from my childhood into something that was contained within God's love, that God had never left my side, that I had always been loved, that people are always capable of changing, and that I could transfigure in grace if I kept following what God was telling me. I told my therapist, the therapist said this was called creative revisioning. So I was creatively revisioning some trauma in my past in order to make sense of it. Well, that worked for me. That was all right. But my spiritual director gave me the advice that I told you earlier. Has your behavior changed? Well, then it's from God. It's like no big deal. Visions are just another way of hearing what God is asking us to do. So, back to the story of what's happening here with Jesus and his disciples. They have a communal vision, which is not unusual in our early Christian. You can see it in the New Testament quite a bit. And this is one of the instances of it, that they are there praying with Jesus. They've climbed the mountain top, and all of a sudden, the three of them have this vision. It's not, Jesus is not having the vision with them. He is the center of their vision. And the fact that they see Moses and Elijah is just another sign that he has been sent by God, because Elijah was sent by God and Moses was sent by God. The two of them climbed mountains, so now all three of them are on the mountain. And another fact about them that's interesting and applicable is that both Elijah and Moses died in a mysterious way. And there is fables and stories and belief that the two of them are coming back someday, especially Elijah, who Jesus says was John the Baptist. So Moses never made it to the Holy Land. No one knows where he is buried. He just disappeared. Elijah was carried away in a burning chariot of fire, and a whirlwind took him up into heaven. And so we're expecting him to come back down at any moment now. And then what does Jesus do? He rises from the dead. So it's like he had these predecessors in the vision. So when our disciple bursts out with, let's build you a hut, or a tent is actually what the word means. We'll build you tents. He's following in the Hebrew ancestry where they put God's presence inside of a tent, which traveled around with them. That was called the tabernacle. And they had the Feast of Tabernacles where everybody pitched a tent in their backyard and remembered what it was like to not have a home and to travel in tents and pitch up your tent every place you go. So that was a very nice thing to say. It was very hospitable of Peter. But the fact is, it didn't matter, because all of a sudden this cloud came and the voice came from God, and they were scared to death, went flat down on their faces, and ironically this physical position of lying flat on the floor like the kids showed us is a symbol of complete offering to God, that you are laying down prone, offering yourself as an offering to God. And indeed, that's what they did. And when they rose back up again, it was only through the touch of Jesus. And this is the only gospel that mentions his touch. He came down a little bit from the mountain and touched each one of them, and the vision disappeared, and it was back to normal perception. And the scripture even says that. And there's just Jesus standing there. Just Jesus, who they're now going to accompany to his temptation, not to his temptation, to his crucifixion and death. They disappear, but they come back, and they start this new life, buoyed by the vision that they had today. May we believe in our visions